Thank you for listening to the Matt's Movie Reviews podcast, available on Podbean, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Amazon Music, and Stitcher. Also, please follow Matt's Movie Reviews on Facebook, YouTube, LinkedIn, Reddit, Instagram, and MeWe. And of course, be sure to visit mattsmoviereviews.net for the latest reviews, top 10 lists, and more. Now, on to the show.
Smart devices in the house.
Just my phone and computer.
Unplug your Wi-Fi and place your phone in the fridge. Do it now. Do you have it?
Yes.
Play it for me, now.
May you rise above the chaos.
Hello and welcome to the Matt's Movie Reviews podcast. I am your host, Matthew Pejkovic, and this is episode number 514. Available now on digital and streaming is Exemplum, a paranoid thriller in which a media-savvy Catholic priest finds himself ensnared in a conspiracy when he attempts to blackmail a wealthy parishioner with secret recordings of his confessions. A powerful and haunting independent feature that tells the story of faith, sin, pride, and corruption. Exemplum also marks the debut feature film of Paul Roland, the director, writer, and star of Exemplum, who I'm glad to say joins me now on the podcast. Paul, thank you very much for joining me today.
Hi, how are you, Matt? Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much for being on. This is a film that I think is one of my favorites of the year, and I really do truly mean that. And what's interesting is that when I was doing some research on the movie, at first, when it came to this film, you just had an initial idea, which was a priest who records his parishioners' confessions. That idea on its own, where did that kind of come from? Was there something that you saw in the media or something that you read? Or was that something that you kind of like an idea that you kind of been messing around with for a little while and you thought, I think this is a time now to kind of try to make this into a movie?
Yeah, that's a fascinating question. It's really multi-pronged answer. It really kind of has to go back to, I had written about 6 screenplays for this film, various different genres and various different budgets. All of them I couldn't get off the ground. It was very difficult. As you know, the industry is very hard and doesn't really reward original ideas, especially original ideas to people who have no connections whatsoever. So I had been commissioned to write a screenplay in the summer of 2019. And after I had written that, I had written a short film. And as I was raising the funds for that short film, I basically thought to myself, okay, I could either take these same funds and make a feature film out of it, and follow the many directors that I had admired from the 1990s, people like Christopher Nolan and Robert Rodriguez and Darren Aronofsky, or I could just make the short film. And so I decided to go the hard route and make the feature film. Now, I had already in the back of my mind, had an idea in my head about a priest that was just recording his confessions. That was just basically it. I had no idea where that would go, what kind of story that would lead me to. It just was there. And I had previously written a screenplay about a editor-in-chief at a website, and he finds out among his staff there's a rogue CIA agent that works for a shadowy figure that infiltrates news organizations and messes around for them from the inside out. And so he hires a rogue MI6 agent to spy on his staff, and it becomes this cat and mouse game to go uncover the mole, and they hack people's phones and emails, and it becomes this spiritual reflection about how far one is willing to go to find an enemy, and a lot of deep state reflections. So I had kind of already those themes about spying on people and taking their private information and using it against them. So I took those same themes, I applied it to the idea of a priest recording his confessions, and it all kind of blossomed from there. I had previously worked in Catholic and conservative media, so that's how the idea of him being a social media influencer came about, and the idea for Exemplum, them being morality tales and medieval morality tales. I had come across and just done some research about medieval types of storytelling, and saw the types of stories that Geoffrey Chaucer told, like the Pardoner's Tale, and it all just blossomed from there.
What's really fascinating when I talk to indie filmmakers such as yourself is that, I mean, a lot of the times a film or a script or a tone of a movie, a lot of times it comes down to what resources you have at your disposal. When it came to Exemplum, what type of resources did you already have that you knew you could use to put this film together? Because from what I understand, you did have access to a Catholic church. That's like one location you can already kind of cross off the list. What else did you have for free or access to, which really helped shape the movie that you put together?
Yeah, that's a wonderful question. You know, that also goes into how the story all came together, because really when you're writing at this level, you have absolutely no artistic freedom at all, zero. So you have to craft your entire story around what you know you can get for free or relatively cheap. So I knew I could get a Catholic church or two for free, because I knew pastors here in the area of Pasadena. And I knew at least I could get a restaurant for cheap or free, and I knew I could get a bar for free. I knew the owner of Griffins of Kinsale in South Pasadena, an Irish pub. So I knew I had to craft a story around all of those things, I knew I could at least get an apartment for free and just guerrilla style everything else. And I think it all really worked well because I chose locations that are, I would say, very naturally dressed sets.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the Catholic Church being, I shot at St. Andrew's here in Pasadena. It's a gorgeous church, a historic church. There's just it's built in like the 1800s. It's a replica of Rome. So I was able to, I would say, take things that were free and make them cinematic on a low scale.
When it came to the whole part of your character of Colin, Father Colin, being kind of like this social media savvy kind of YouTube star, that's really kind of interesting for me, because I think over the last, I don't know, say 10, 15 years, the rise of this kind of like new evangelization, especially on YouTube with things like, Word on Fire or other things as well, has been a really kind of interesting to watch in that, it's a good tool, I think, for evangelization. Myself being a Catholic, I watch a lot of that content and such. I think is a really good way to kind of talk about the church and issues within the church. But you can never replace what it's like to be in a church. In what really exemplified that for me was when COVID hit. Once they start doing streaming masses, you knew that, look, websites, streaming, YouTube, all this stuff is great and all, but they can't really replace what the real thing is like. Do you think when it comes to the character of Colin, when it came to the whole thing of what he calls the new sermon, that it seemed like he was trying to, I don't know what the word is, trying to push his parish at least a little too far ahead of the game in regards to what he thinks the church needed for the future? Or do you think his motivations are more, say, pride and ego driven than it is, and how he can kind of push his community more into understanding the church and especially his parish?
Yeah, I think that's a very good question, and I think a lot of people have responded to the film very well, because I keep that very ambiguous. I think there's a little bit of a mixture of both in there. I don't think Colin is even though he does evil things in the film, I don't think he is an evil man. I think he is very caught up in this modern world that we live in, where there's this drive to be popular at all costs, and it doesn't really necessarily become about a message or about being quality at something. You have to be popular, and he'll do whatever means to get there, and that's true everywhere, and that can be true in the Catholic Church. That can be true in society in general. But I also do think that there is a piece of him that does want to reach people, or use his life for good in that regard. He's obviously a talented artist, and he is a talented storyteller, and he does have a faith, and he wants to combine them both, and all of those can get caught up with each other, and unfortunately it's and then when he comes up against, it's not really the fact that his show gets canceled, that he goes off the deep end. It's also because he comes up against hypocrisy, and he comes up against corruption as well, among people that are doing probably the exact same thing that he's doing, and far worse. But they're ahead of the game. They're entrenched. They're established. They can get away with bad things. So there's just I think there's a lot of nuance to Colin's character and his downfall and his motivations.
The Matt's Movie Reviews podcast is brought to you by TeePublic. TeePublic is the world's largest marketplace for independent creators to sell their work on the highest quality merchandise. With over 1.2 million designs, TeePublic is sure to have something you'll love. The Matt's Movie Reviews podcast is brought to you by Amazon. The world's leading online store, Amazon is your first stop to buy a wide range of products at competitive prices with fast delivery times. Amazon is also a world-class entertainment hub that includes Prime Video, Audible, Twitch, Amazon Music, and more. Sign up with Amazon today and experience the best in online shopping and entertainment. Please support Matt's Movie Reviews on Patreon. Get access to exclusive content, request movie reviews and top 10 lists, and help support my work. Please click on the Patreon link in the description below. I think something that he spoke to me in regards to Colin is that a lot of times his ego kind of gets in the way of his kind of like his more pure motivations. He often says throughout the film, I am my own man now. It's a real kind of interesting kind of phrase there, because he thinks he's always in charge of everything, but there's always like different type of elements that are going against him. If you look at it in a faith-based perspective, especially a Christian one, you can say I'm my own man now, but everyone kind of like within the realm of the Christian religion knows that God is the author of it all, so you're not really your own man. But if you look at it on the other way, which is what the hacker always says, is that we live in a world of this sort of chaos. So even if you think you are your own man, life is going to throw curveballs your way and change that trajectory very fast. And I think it's a really kind of interesting kind of dilemma he finds himself in.
Yeah, because I think ultimately it reminds me of the phrase in the gospel. They tell Jesus Christ, Lord, where shall we go? In many ways. So I think Colin's trajectory is he's in the church, and he's trying to do things in the world from the church, and you realize that the church can be a brutal place sometimes, and not always holding up to its mission statement. And in that, he becomes bitter and decides to go out in the world and live by the world's terms, and then realizes that the world can be just as vicious and brutal as everywhere else. And so the only option for him is crawling back into the arms of God's mercy in the end.
I want to talk about your work as an actor in the film. You play Colin in the movie, and I'm really curious when it comes to that experience of being the lead in your own film. What does that do to you as a filmmaker and a scriptwriter when you're saying your own dialogue and you're in front of your own camera and you look back on it and you do your edits and everything else? Does that change the way that you look at script and script writing now, especially in regards to dialogue or anything like that? Like, when you do dialogue now, having experience saying that dialogue in your own movie, does that kind of change the way that you approach the writing of your scripts in any way?
I would say no, because I've been one of the things about being a screenwriter and having written several scripts and screenplays, and why I was able to transfer so well into doing the part of Colin, which was itself a budgetary choice. I mean, we're working 7 weekends with no budget. I couldn't get an actor to come out and do that level of work for no money who was going to be able to do the job. So that's why I did it. But having written several screenplays, it does hone your skills as an actor, because when you are writing a part and you are writing a character, you do learn to pick up nuances, and you do learn to figure out, part of how you write a scene and write a good one is acting out the parts and being in there, being in that scene, feeling those emotions, feeling the nuances of how you approach the character. So in many ways, I would say it doesn't change how I write the screenplay. I would say me writing the screenplay changed how I was as an actor, or shaped how I was as an actor in a lot of ways. Yeah.
The film is shot in black and white. I'm curious, when it comes to that creative decision, how much of that comes down to budgetary concerns? How much of that comes to, is it a creative decision? For example, if I gave you the scenario that if, just say, you didn't have $9,500 to do this film, just say you had $900,000 to do the film, would black and white still be the way you wanted to go to have the story presented visually?
Yeah, so I would say it's 50% budgetary and 50% artistic creative, and they both kind of work hand in hand in that regard. So I do think that there is a practical reason for us doing black and white at this level, mostly because we do not have professional art direction. We don't have professional production design, professional costumes, makeup, most of the time even. So by going black and white, it just blends everything together. I don't have to worry about colors, mixing and matte, and things looking drab. It just gives you a little bit more freedom in a sense. And I would say it actually makes something that's cheap not look so cheap, because you don't have to, it just allows people to focus on the story and the performances and the camera angles, and that's that. And creatively, the film is film noir, so it does go with the genre. And I also was, like I said, I loved the 1990s black and white 1990s independent films. I loved the works of Christopher Nolan, Darren Aronofsky, Kevin Smith. Spike Lee in many ways was a precursor to this in the late 80s with She's Gotta Have It. I loved that spirit of these artists that came from nowhere and taking what little resources they could and making a movie. This was before the independent movement was a racket. Before there was a film freeway or a film festival on every street corner that's nearly impossible to get into without having connections. So I wanted this film to look like we just picked up a 16 millimeter black and white camera and went and shot this thing. So that's why I added the 8 millimeter film grains on there and drained the whites and the highlights and added the Gaussian blurs to really sell that feeling that we were shooting this on black and white film in the 1990s.
It's really interesting how at the start of our conversation, you talk about how you had a choice whether to take the budget you had to make a short or make a feature. And I think the decision to make a feature over a short is one that I don't come across a lot. Like when I talk to a lot of filmmakers, shorts they feel is the way to go. They develop a style or what have you. But when it comes to, I don't know, distributors or such, if I was a distributor of a film and someone wanted to show me a short film that went for 13 minutes, but I had to bankroll a movie that went for maybe, I don't know, 90 to 100 minutes, would a short really be the way to go that this filmmaker can hold a narrative longer than, say, just as long as a Netflix show? Because I want to see the actual work of a feature film in action by this filmmaker. And I think, is that something that was kind of like your philosophy as well? Did you think to yourself, look, if I'm going to have people distribute a feature film of mine, I'm going to make a feature film, and instead of making essentially what is kind of like a reel as opposed to an actual film? Absolutely.
This is a great question, and my answer might offend some filmmakers because I understand why filmmakers make a short film. I want to be very clear. It took me very long to come to this conclusion. I myself had tried making high budget short films, and all of them were difficult to get off the ground. So I understand what it's like to be in that mentality, to feel like, no, I got to make a short film. I have to make a full-blown professional short film for $30,000, $50,000 so that I can show people what I can do, so to speak. But having said that, and having made this film and having seen so many shorts, I would say that a short film tells me absolutely nothing about a filmmaker's ability to hold a narrative for 90 plus minutes. Mm-hmm. It just doesn't. It might tell me how well you can do a commercial, might tell me how well you can maybe even do a TV episode, but it does not tell me how you can hold a narrative for 90 plus minutes, which is very challenging. There is a world of difference between holding people for 15 minutes and holding people for 90 plus minutes. So if you want to get people to believe that you can do that, you have to be able to just do that and just brace, the challenges of doing it. And I've told people, if all you have is 10,000 or 20 or whatever it is you got, then do it with that. Now, look, like I said, it took me a very long time to come down to this. And in many ways, I felt like, I was not a film major at Cal State Northridge. I minored in screenwriting, went into media management, but having seen kind of like what film school tells a lot of young filmmakers, it really imprints that mentality in their mind that they have to make that short film. They have to spend the $50,000, which $50,000 on something which is basically practice. I would not want to spend $50,000 on practice. I would say, if you want to practice, then make little short films with your friends for a couple $100 or very little money at all. I made 10 comedy sketches with my friend Adam Yenser, and those did well on the internet. Just do little things like that. Don't spend that amount of money on a short film. I don't think it's the wise thing to do.
You mentioned before that you had several screenplays, drafts, or maybe even completed ones written already. After Exemplum, after the release of your Exemplum, in order press you're going to do with that, are you going to go back to look at those initial screenplays and maybe doing a retooling or reworking for your next project? Or are you looking at, have you got fresh ideas going ahead? Because I got to say, having watched Exemplum, I really can't wait to see what's next on the radar for you, because I really did enjoy the film.
Oh, thank you, Matt. It means a lot to hear you say that. I've got fresh ideas, absolutely, and I have screenplays that are already written. The ones that I have written, I love. I would very much love to create those. They're all each, I think, higher budget than where I'm at right now. I think the most appropriate film for me next would be somewhere in the 100,000 to 500,000 range, and prove my skills in that arena, and then hopefully advance on to something with a couple million dollars. So I've got the fresh ideas for whatever arena I have to go into next.
Well, for everyone out there listening, Exemplum available now on digital and streaming. A lot of places you can watch it right now. I'm pretty sure you can see it on Tubi. What other places can people check out the movie?
Yeah, right now they can see it on Tubi for free. They can rent or purchase a high quality download at Vimeo on demand, $1.99 to rent and $9.99 to purchase.
When I really recommend people do watch this movie, because I think it's really important, especially in the movie landscape right now, that filmmakers give the audience something to experience and talk about, different subjects that might seem taboo to some people, but to others like myself are just really up in my wheelhouse. And I really enjoyed the characters. I really enjoyed the plot. I really enjoyed the spiritual and religious aspects to the film, and how it all blended together. So if everyone's like me in that regard, you want to watch really smart, powerful, haunting filmmaking, I recommend Exemplum all the way. And Paul Roland, I congratulate you with this, your debut film. You really did dive into that deep end. You made the feature. I know you did it under incredibly stressful circumstances, which if people check out your socials, they can find out more about that. But you did it in the end, man, and people are going to be watching it now. Early reviews have been really good. My review will be up very soon as well. And I'll also be praising the film because I think this is one of the best films I've seen this year, and I mean that from the bottom of my heart. And Paul, I just want to thank you for your time, and hopefully we get to talk again. I hope one of those original ideas or one of those screenplays you already have gets up and made next, and I can't wait till that time.
Absolutely. I'm always happy to talk anything. I love talking cinema, and I love, I'll just say this, I have always been a lover of cinema. I'm a lover of movies. I don't want movies to die. I think David Fincher said it best the other day. He said, movies are not dead. They're just abandoned. And I want us all to resurrect movies, because I think movies are the greatest art form, dramatic art form that has ever existed. And it's going to be really sad if they give way to television shows and series and TikTok videos. So, yeah.
I agree wholeheartedly with all of that. All right, Paul, thank you very much for your time today. Take care. And until next time, again, best of luck with the film.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you for watching the Matt's Movie Reviews channel. Please subscribe for more reviews, podcast interviews, and exclusive content. Also, if you would like to request a review and support my work, please join my Patreon via the link in the description below.